All right, so here we have a really cringy video we're going to be looking at here. It's from Roaming Millennial. Now this video surprisingly only has 6,808 views. It was uploaded like 4 days ago, and she's got 351,000 subscribers. So I'm not sure what's going on. The view count is very low. Not good. You know what I'm saying? Not good. But here we're going to be looking at this video. The title of this video is Sanders and O'Rourke's Stingy Charitable Giving. Now, they read off this. I'm going to read it to you really quick. On the screen, the picture says, Bernie Sanders and Beto O'Rourke give almost nothing to charity. Last night, the Washington Post reported that Beto O'Rourke releases tax returns for the past 10 years. Of course, the feel-good, inevitably government-expanding presidential contender should probably have been more hesitant to release his returns because it doesn't take much sleuthing to figure out from them that O'Rourke's made $370,412 in 2017, while giving a measly $11.66 of that income to charity. As the Post noted, this makes Beto's charitable giving less than 1/3 of 1% of his household income. Other candidates who claim conservatives are true greedy ones and deserve to be smited for their fiscal sins don't stack up much better. Bernie Sanders and his wife gave roughly 3% of their astonishingly large $566,000 income to charity in 2017. So, we're going to let this play through. This is an article from the Federalist. She's trying to attack and, not smear because it's not based on a lie, but trying to damage the reputation of Bernard Sanders as well as Beto O'Rourke. But who cares about Beto O'Rourke? So let's check this out.
Gave roughly 3% of their astonishingly large $566,000 income to charity in 2017. All right, so this headline and this information is making the rounds on conservative media shows and everything like that. Some people who may be wondering, why are you attacking them based on charitable nations? Why does this matter? I agree that you'd be a jerk to just pick a random person out on the street and say, how much are you giving to charity? Nope, not enough. Bad person. Okay, I don't approve of charity shaming people in general. We should all be trying to do as much as we can, but ultimately, personal finances, I feel like, should be kind of private. The reason why this is relevant, though, is because I think a lot of politicians on the left, specifically people like Bernie Sanders, but I think sort of Robert O'Rourke as well. I'm not as familiar with his platform aside from skateboarding and standing on things. But a lot of, especially left-wing politicians, they'll say, it's immoral to have all of this huge wealth, and conservatives are often painted as not wanting to do enough for charity to help people. So I think that's...
No, that's not really accurate. I mean, the issue is giving help to people in need. So it's not that it's about like conservatives are not down to give voluntarily to charity. We're talking about the conservatives are not down to have programs in place that actually help poor people. That's what we're talking about. It has nothing to do with them giving out charity, because that's not what our plans have. It has nothing to do with giving charity. It has to do with passing Medicare for all, passing free college education, etc., etc.
That's why when stuff like this comes out, conservatives like to make a big deal out of it, because it's kind of like, all right, you clearly believe in this sort of redistributive mode of government where people who are rich should be taking care of people who are poor. And I think the point people are trying to make bringing this up is, if you really do believe that and you're not just pandering for votes, why aren't you giving more of your own income, right? Because yeah, taxes are what they are, but you actually still can choose to pay more in tax if you want to, and you can always choose to give more in charity if you want to.
In fact, you often get a tax refund if you give to charity too,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, it's deductible. Yeah. There's benefits.
So the IRS will actually refund you if you overpay taxes. They won't take the money from you. Now, it is true that you can give to the Treasury and they'll use that to pay off the debt. I think what they call is patriotic donations or something like that. But the point of this is, and this is what's really, annoying and disgusting that comes from the right. And to be fair, someone like me and people on the left do this as well. It's like this overly hypocritical policing, this overly, policing of hypocrisy, and basically trying to like zing, oh, you hypocrite, instead of really arguing specific points. And that's what it seems like here. So now the right wing is basically pivoted from really talking about the merits of positions like Medicare for all and free college, because now we're not talking about the feasibility, the morality, or the quality, or any of those things about those positions, and now we're talking about people, specifically Bernie Sanders in this case, and trying to do a character assassination of Bernie Sanders. And what that in effect does is it halts the conversation on those issues because they're afraid to talk about those issues. And so Russell Brand, I read a Russell Brand quote where he basically says that, when I was poor, they called me bitter. And when I'm rich, they call me a hypocrite. I'm starting to think they don't want to talk about income inequality. And that's exactly what the right wing does. So it's this really disgusting, embarrassing garbage that exists in which it's like there's no even talking about the merits anymore. It's just we're just going to character assassinate you. So if you're poor and you just want to take the rich's money, you're envious. And then if you're rich or have some money, if you're not homeless, you're a hypocrite. And so therefore, I don't know, we shouldn't talk about income inequality or raising taxes. The whole thing is nonsensical, but it's a great strategy for dummies like this that we see on screen. It's a great strategy for dummies like this.
Benefits to it. So why aren't these people who preach that it should be, society's responsibility, a government's responsibility to take care of the poor and needy among us? Why?
Because that's not a systemic change. And so this is the problem, okay, is that if Bernie Sanders gives whatever percentage of his money away to charity, what does that change? Nothing. It doesn't change shit, you fucking idiot. It doesn't change anything. What he's advocating for is a systemic change of raising taxes on the rich, passing Medicare for all, free college, and the different proposals, living wage in every state. Those are the things that he's proposing. If he donates whatever money he has, that doesn't change anything. You're missing the bigger picture here. This is actually what Hassan Piker was telling Charlie Kirk when Charlie Kirk was telling him to give away all of his money or something like that, which he doesn't understand what socialism is. But so why are you trying to do this dumb hypocrisy gotcha when there is none? And you're the people who, funny enough, these are the people who are against character assassinations and be like, oh, that's what the left always does. But here, that's what you're doing this entire time. That's exactly what you're doing.
Aren't they giving more? Especially considering they do often paint conservatives as heartless. And again, I don't want to speak for Beto too much because I don't.
Yeah, if you're voting for people who are cutting Social Security, cutting Medicare, and doing all these, throwing 30 million people off of health insurance, like Donald Trump tried to do, and he effectively threw some people off. And got rid of the individual mandate, which is the bedrock for the ACA. Yeah, obviously. Of course you're heartless. You're a piece of garbage is what you are, actually. So, yeah, I don't understand your point.
I don't know. Robert, too much, because all I know is that he likes to stand on desks. But it turns out, and the article gets into this as well, that conservatives, if you actually look at the breakdown, are more likely to give to charity than liberals. So perhaps there's also a case to be made that maybe Sanders and O'Rourke aren't outliers in this situation. And that's another excerpt from the piece that we have. This is a quote from them. It says, "There's something to be said for giving credit where due and recognizing when our political opponents do genuine good. Still, Arthur Brooks wrote on broader charitable giving habits in his 2015 book, The Conservative Heart, noting, households headed by a conservative give on average 30% more dollars to charity than households headed by a liberal. This discrepancy is not an artifact of income differences. On the contrary, the average liberal family earns an average of 6% more per year than the average conservative family, yet still gives less anyway." So I hear this all the time, that you're a conservative, or this applies to libertarians as well, you want lower taxes and smaller government because you're greedy. You want to keep your own money. You don't want to help the poor.
You want the poor to suffer.
You want the poor to suffer. That's your thing. That's your fetish, is just seeing poor, needy children not getting health care. That's
True.
No.
Accurate.
Not true at all.
No, that's 100% true. I don't give a shit what kind of... Now, charity's a great thing, and it's awesome, right? But there's not only a fetishization of, like she said there, of seeing, poor children, but there's also a fetishization of charity. Charity doesn't solve jack shit. How about that? Point blank. Charity is the bullshit, half-ass garbage that's used by rich people to try to put a Band-Aid on a fucking big-ass wound is what it is. Okay? Really, there should be no need for any serious charity at all, because the government should be taking care of the vast majority of it. So the government should have Medicare for all. The government should have free college, et cetera, right? So we don't have, you know how I think 50% of the GoFundMes are for medical cases. So we shouldn't need that kind of charity because the government should be making sure that that's not a need. So, you know, one with a rational brain and a, you know, not toxic heart would agree probably that, yeah, you know, life and death probably shouldn't be something that is based on the amount of cash you have. So I don't understand the point you're trying to make. Your measly ass charity isn't doing trash. I don't understand what your point is. And so now the conversation is being switched from, hey, look, conservatives, you're supporting heartless, horrific monsters as your politicians who wreak havoc on the nation and the people in it, to, haha, conservatives give more in charity. So the liberals, I don't even know what the point here is, to be honest with you. What even is the point? I don't understand this. It's like a weird, like, reputation attack.
There's a genuine difference in philosophy between liberals and conservatives. In general, I think liberals view government how conservatives view charity and the church, right? Because if a conservative wants to do good for people, which despite what some people may think they genuinely do, not every conservative is heartless.
Most of them are.
They would give money to charity, to their church, their local community, whatever. I think liberals...
And what does that result in? A measly pile, not even a pile of shit, a tiny amount of shit.
On the other hand, and I'm not saying that, you know, Beto, Robert O'Rourke, and Bernie Sanders are bad people, but I think they just genuinely do see the government as a necessary intermediary for them to interact with their fellow man. I think they really genuinely do believe that if the government isn't coming and taking the money and distributing it, then there's like kind of no other way. I think a lot of people on the left genuinely do believe that if we want to help these people, it needs to be government.
The irony, though, is that they believe it more for the people that donate more than themselves who donate less. That's the irony of it all to me.
Yeah, so I think it's definitely ironic, and I think
What?
I know in response to this, people are going to say, "Well, what about Donald Trump's tax returns? When he
this is funny.
Talk about other people's tax returns." We actually know that Donald Trump gives a lot more to charity than these guys right off the bat because he actually donates his entire salary. So we don't even need his tax returns to be able to say that.
That's a funny defense of Donald Trump. Do you have any idea how measly of a shit stain for doofus Trump $400,000 is? All you need to look, and this is a fascinating, I forget which verse this was in the Bible, but Jesus basically, he tells a bunch of rich people who are giving like little slobs of their amount, like vast amounts of wealth to charity. And he basically says a widow who came up and gave basically all she had, which was virtually nothing because she basically had nothing. She gave it to charity. She gave eons more than the rich people who gave little shit. Do you have any idea how little $400,000 amounts to for Donald Trump? Hey, don't take it up with me, man. Don't take my argument up with me, man. I know she's I think she's Christian. A bunch of other conservatives are Christian. Take it up with Jesus. Take it up with your big homie Jesus because he obviously made sense on this issue. That's not in any way impressive whatsoever. $400,000 from Donald Trump? Get out of here.
But again, like, I'm not saying that Bernie Sanders or O'Rourke are bad candidates or whatever because of this. I think there's a genuine argument to be made where even if you don't perhaps live by the things you preach, you could still be effective in implementing them. I don't know. But, you know, they chose themselves to release these tax returns. I don't think there's a problem with us commenting on,
Anyway, so that's basically that. But here's also something interesting that exists over on Bernie's site. So if you are to go over here on Bernie's site in tax returns, you can go to it. Just go to berniesanders.com. There's a big tab that says tax returns. Here's a funny little passage they didn't actually mention. So this is funny. It says in 2018, the Sanders donated 3.4% of their adjusted gross income to charity. Overall, their charitable giving does not account for additional charitable proceeds from one of Sanders' books, The Speech, which are donated directly to charity. The Sanders do not take a tax deduction for those contributions, so they do not show up on their tax returns. The Sanders' donations have gone primarily to seniors, low-income organizations, educational entities, and environmental and housing advocacy groups. So this does not include the proceeds that went from his book, The Speech, which I don't know how much that is, how much he gave. I'm assuming it's a pretty good chunk. But also there's, I guess my understanding is if you don't write off the the charitable giving that you did, it doesn't show up on your tax return. So I guess there could also be other stuff that he did charity-wise that didn't show up. But overall, there is no bogus hypocrisy. All the right wing is trying to do is they're trying to halt the conversation because the left is winning. I should say the Bernie-crats are winning because a lot of the left is stupid. The neo-libs. The left is winning. Medicare for all is supported by 70% of Americans, 50% of Republicans. So what do they try to do? They just try to take you down. They try to take down your character because they no longer can argue on the merits. So let's not talk about Medicare for all being super efficient and working. Let's instead talk about how Bernie Sanders, the spearheader of this, is a hypocrite. He argues for higher taxes, but he paid the Trump tax returns. Whoa, he paid the Trump tax percentages. How is that hypocritical? The tax percentages that he advocates for would apply to him. This is a very textbook garbage attempt at pivoting that should not be allowed because it's a very, very cowardly move that is actually, in its highest irony, something that has been claimed by conservatives for quite a while that the left has been doing. So roaming millennial is not the brightest. In fact, she's quite the dumbest.